They set a silver plate in front of me with ceremony you'd reserve for a crown. When the lid lifted, there was no crown, just a single crusted heel of bread, dry as a dare, plain as an insult, while every other plate around me steamed with braised lamb and jeweled rice. My mother leaned in so only I could hear, and still managed to make sure 3 tables caught it. That's all you deserve. Across the head table, my sister, white satin, cathedral veil, the sort of smile that makes strangers forget to check for teeth, tilted her glass in my direction. Pathetic as always. I broke the bread. It flaked against my fingers like old paint. I put a piece in my mouth and let it sit on my tongue. It tasted like every Thanksgiving I'd been left off the group photo, every text thread I'd been excluded from, every time I'd swallowed a comeback and said, "It's fine." When they called for toasts, my sister's new husband raised his flute, my mother dabbed a performative tear, and I stood. I didn't reach for a glass. I reached for the microphone. "Let's watch something special," I said, voice steady as a blade. The ballroom lights dimmed. The screen behind the sweetheart table flickered to life. Silverware paused midair. Laughter thinned. "Turn it off, please!" my sister shrieked, too fast, too loud, and the first frame hadn't even finished loading. 300 guests turned as one. The screen brightened, and in the breath before the night split open, I smiled. My name is Sasha Quinn. I'm 28 years old, the middle child who learned early how to hold a room's broken silence together with both hands. I'm the daughter who could recite RSVP counts and seating charts like scripture, the sister who once stitched hems at midnight so the bride would look perfect for a different man on a different day. I'm the family's quiet fix until tonight. Before we go further, because I promise you it gets worse for them and better for me. Tap like if you've ever swallowed a humiliation in front of people who were supposed to love you. Subscribe for more real-life revenge stories, and tell me where you're watching from in the comments. I read them. I really do. Back to the wedding. The venue was the kind of place my mother collected like charms. Marble foyer, dripping chandeliers, a garden the color of money. My sister, Paige, had insisted on a 12-piece string ensemble. Violins look expensive on video, a gelato cart, and a flower wall taller than the marriage would turn out to be. I arrived early because of course I did. People like me don't arrive late, we arrive useful. I rewired a misbehaving uplight, fixed a crooked place card, and showed the photographer where the power outlets hid behind velvet drapes. Every vendor thought I worked there. Every relative thought I owed them something. At the rehearsal, Paige had whispered, "Don't stand too close to the aisle. You pull focus." Tonight, she sat me at table 22, as far from the head table as you can get while still counting as family, right beside the kitchen door that barked and banged each time a server slipped through, carrying plates I wouldn't taste. The place card read Sasha Q. Not my full name. Not even a last name spelled out, just an initial, as if giving me letters cost extra. The bread arrived with a flourish, and the server, God bless her, looked stricken. I have another plate coming," she whispered, eyes pleading. "It's okay," I said, because it always had to be. But it wasn't. Not tonight. My mother's sneer found me like heat-seeking spite. "You know how she is," she stage whispered to Aunt Dottie. "Always so sensitive. One little joke, and she makes it about her. One little joke." As if the years had been a single punchline. People like to tell you weddings bring out the best in families. They forget how easily satin hides bruises. Paige basked under the best of us like a cat in a square of sunlight. My mother fussing with her veil, my father turning into a statue no one asked for, the cousins orbiting with gleaming teeth and phones ready. "You look beautiful," I told her at the bridal suite door, because some lines you deliver for yourself. She held out her wrist without looking at me, the pearl bracelet I'd bought her dangling from my fingers. "Clasp this," she said. "Careful. It's real." I did. Her skin was cool. Her perfume was expensive, the kind that smells like a hotel lobby. "You're shaking," I said softly. She laughed. Not nerves. Excitement. Her eyes flicked over me. That dress actually fits. Good job. I smiled because the other option was a fire alarm. At table 22, the centerpiece was a mason jar with fake peonies. The rest of the room had orchids in crystal cylinders. The place settings elsewhere gleamed. Ours mismatched like a yard sale. A cousin I hadn't seen since middle school leaned over to ask if I still did that little job at the print shop, even though I've been a video editor for 5 years. I run post-production, I said. Documentary and live event. He blinked. Cool. Like TikToks. Sure, I said. Like TikToks. The DJ warmed the room with safe hits. Toasts began. The best man stumbled through a story that made the groom look foolish and old boys clubby. The maid of honor cried on cue and called Paige the kind of woman who would never, ever settle. My mother's champagne flute hovered unjustifiably near her mouth the entire time, as if waiting for a spotlight, an anthem, an apology in reverse. Let's get a word from our lovely sister of the bride, Sasha, the MC chirped at last. A round of applause. Paige's gaze snapped to me. It said, keep it short. It said, keep it sweet. It said, know your place. Here's what they didn't know. For 6 weeks, I had rehearsed this walk in my head. Not the walk to the microphone, the walk back to myself. I stood, smoothing a dress I'd paid for in cash at a consignment shop because my mother had forgotten to include me in the bridesmaid's order. The ballroom quieted, that anticipatory hush people do before a joke they hope lands at someone else's expense. I stepped onto the platform beside the sweetheart table. Hi, I said, and the sound system kissed my voice through the room. I'm Sasha, Paige's sister. I'm here to keep it short. I let the laugh happen, gentle as a false start. And I'm here to show, not tell. 3 seats from the end, my mother's smile froze. The wedding planner, bless her clipboard, straightened. The AV tech I'd met during setup earlier tipped his chin once. He'd been easy to help. A mislabeled HDMI, a ground loop hum only a patient ear notices, a coffee he hadn't had time to fetch for himself. People remember who brings them power and caffeine. I glanced up at the 30-foot screen, the same one that had an hour before played a saccharine montage of childhood photos I had scanned and color-corrected for free because I'm good at my job even when I'm being treated like furniture. The first frame cued, black then a slate. Paige stood, veil trembling with air conditioning and dread. Turn it off. Right now. The groom pivoted toward her. What is it? My mother rose, pearls clicking. Sasha, don't you dare ruin. I'm not ruining anything, I said, and didn't have to raise my voice. I'm revealing. People love confetti at weddings. I've always preferred clarity. You don't need the whole backstory tonight. That's what later is for. How I knew what I knew. How I got what I got. How long I had been told to stop imagining patterns when the quilt had been on the bed the entire time. But you should know this. I don't do chaos. I do cuts. In my world, a story lives or dies by where you place the truth. Too soon and people flinch away. Too late, and they've already left the room. You find the exact frame where a face gives itself away, and you build around it like a cathedral. I had built this. Carefully, quietly, legally. The planner, poor woman, reached for the tech booth with panic hands. The tech didn't move. He had a cue list. My cue list. Play on mark. Dim house to 60%. Mute lectern mic for the duration. Turn it off. Paige's voice broke on the last word. Her new husband's face did something I'd never seen it do, think. Aunt Dottie whispered to Aunt Lynn. What on earth did she put up there? At table 22, a server set a full plate before me, breathless. She must have run from the kitchen. I'm so sorry, she said. This is for you. I smiled at her. Thank you. I didn't sit down. The screen brightened. Time stamp burned white in the corner. Date from 3 months ago. A hotel hallway. Anonymous, except for the carpet my mother had pinned on Pinterest 2 summers back for destination inspiration. A door opened. Paige stepped out, hair in a messy bun, wearing the groom's college hoodie and someone else's smile. Another man followed, not the groom. He adjusted his tie, said something that made her laugh without sound. She kissed him like a secret she wasn't planning to keep. A collective inhale scraped through the room. Fake, my mother hissed too fast. This is a deep fake. I read about those. I let the second clip roll. Text scrolling. Names blurred except the one that mattered, Paige. If he thinks vows mean I'll stop, he doesn't know me. The message read, little gray time stamps marching like soldiers across years. The groom didn't look at the screen. He looked at his wife. That was the first thing that broke me in a way that felt clean. He looked at her, not the proof of her. Turn it off, please. Paige screamed, tearing at the mic cord at my feet as if sound could be strangled. The cord wasn't the one in use. My mother rounded on me, mirror of 100 kitchen fights where I decided not to speak. How dare you, she spat. You don't do this to family. Family. Interesting verb choice. The night spiderwebbed. In the back, the gelato cart man set down his scoop. Children stilled mid-run, like someone had pressed pause on their legs. The violinists, already halfway through a song the DJ had asked them to fake along to, lowered their bows. I didn't gloat. That's not my flavor. I watched. An editor, even when she's the subject, watches. The groom's father stood. The maid of honor sat. The best man whispered a prayer disguised as, "Oh God." The third clip, a voice memo. Paige's voice, glassy with drink and something meaner. "She'll eat whatever I give her," she was saying to someone, laughter muffled by a car interior. Dry bread, dry bones, whatever. That's Sasha's role. The hall didn't gasp this time. It shifted. Sympathy rearranged its furniture. People always knew where the real ugliness lived. They just needed permission to look. I turned from the screen to the room. Mic back on because the cue sheet said so. "I brought receipts," I said calmly, because I knew you'd call me a liar. I brought dates, I brought sources, I brought consent forms from everyone who appears. I let my eyes find my mother's. I brought the truth because you never brought me anything but hunger. The dry bread sat uneaten, like a setup I'd finally paid off. Security wasn't called. There was nowhere to drag me that wasn't a hallway I had already walked down in shoes I had bought myself. The wedding planner didn't faint. She grabbed a clipboard and started doing the math of refunds and reputations. The DJ played silence like a pro. "Why?" the groom asked, almost whispering. He wasn't asking me. Paige's face did what faces do when masks crack. Smaller, older, sharp where it had been smooth. "Because she's jealous," she said, grasping at the only rope she'd ever learned to throw. "She's always been jealous." I didn't correct her. I didn't need to. The screen behind us did the rest, rolling through the timeline, the hotels, the messages, the calendar entries, marked with euphemisms that suddenly read fluorescent under a different light. I watched shoulders square or slump. I watched who reached for whom and who did not. I watched my mother look everywhere except at me. 300 guests, 300 mirrors, and not one of them kind. People will ask me later, why do it here? Why not tell him privately? Why not spare the family? As if I hadn't spared everyone for 28 years, picking up shards with raw hands and smiling when I bled. As if Paige would have stopped if asked. As if my mother would have believed me without proof strong enough to pull a room off its axis. I didn't do it to crush them. I did it to stop them. The difference is a haircut, small, but it changes the whole face. The video ended where I chose it to end. Not with a shout, but with a whisper. A clip from childhood. Paige at 12, me at 10, sitting on the porch steps, knees touch-kissing, sharing a cinnamon roll, licking fingers and laughing. No timestamp, no captions. Just before. Before we learned what we were allowed to ask for. Before my mother choreographed our compassion into competition. Before dry bread. The house lights rose. Reality flooded back in, arriving like the first honest breath after a long-held lie. "Congratulations," I said gently into the mic, to no one and everyone. "May your life together be built on what is true." I set the microphone on the linen as if it could bruise, stepped down, and walked back to table 22. The server's plate, mine, still waited warm. I sat. I ate one perfect forkful, because sometimes victory looks like chewing at your own pace. Behind me, my sister sobbed, my mother raged, the groom spoke a sentence I couldn't hear and then left his chair standing. A chair at a sweetheart table looks so lonely when only one person occupies it. 300 guests didn't clap. They didn't have to. Their silence was louder than applause. I folded my napkin, set it beside the plate, and stood without rushing. I didn't look back at the screen. I'd already seen it more times than anyone else. That's what editors do. We sit with the truth until it stops shaking. At the exit, the flower wall loomed, all artifice and filter. I plucked one silk petal and tucked it into my clutch. Souvenir. Reminder. Evidence that not everything soft is real, and not everything real needs to be soft. Outside, the night air felt like reward. I breathed it in and tasted more than bread. I tasted the first course of a new menu. And if you think the wedding was the whole feast, you don't know how long I've been hungry. Humiliation doesn't grow overnight. It's cultivated, water drop by drop until it takes root, so deep you almost forget who planted it. That wedding wasn't the first time my family had tried to remind me of my place. It was simply the loudest. The truth? I'd been rehearsing for that night my entire life. I was born between two storylines. Paige, 3 years older, was the golden child, the miracle, the princess who could do no wrong. I was filler, the extra, a daughter who was useful when convenient, invisible when inconvenient. From the moment we were old enough to hold utensils, Paige got the silver spoon. I got the chipped one. My mother would smile across the dinner table at her eldest, glowing with pride, and then glance at me with sighs disguised as silence. "Sasha, stop slouching. Sasha, don't talk with your mouth full. Sasha, can't you see how your sister does it?" The message was always clear. Paige is the standard. You are the shadow. Birthdays told the story better than I ever could. When Paige turned 16, my parents rented a hall, hired a DJ, and filled the night with sparkling decorations. She wore a tiara and made a grand entrance to a Katy Perry song. When I turned 16, we had a cake at home. A plain sheet cake, leftover balloons from a neighbor's party, and candles my mother plucked out of a drawer. Paige blew out half of them for fun before I even made a wish. Everyone laughed. Everyone but me. School wasn't much different. Paige was the cheerleader, the honor roll student the girl teachers doted on. "Oh, you're Paige's sister," they would ask me with polite disinterest. "Yes," I'd say, and watch the invisible box slam shut. By the time I reached high school, I had given up trying to compete. I learned to work quietly, to excel where no one bothered to look. In art, in editing videos for classmates, in telling stories the way cameras and cuts tell them. It was my refuge. But in my family, if it didn't sparkle on a stage, it didn't matter. "Paige is going to law school," my mother boasted to neighbors. "Paige is dating such a promising young man." When people asked about me, she waved it off. "Sasha's figuring herself out." Translation: Sasha doesn't count. The betrayals weren't always loud. Sometimes they came softly, in ways designed to cut without leaving marks. When Paige needed a new dress for prom, guess whose allowance went missing? When my parents wanted to fund her trip abroad, guess whose college savings suddenly weren't enough? When Paige failed a class and cried, guess who stayed up all night finishing her projects so she wouldn't have to repeat the semester? I gave and gave, hoping one day they'd see me. Hoping kindness would be returned. Hoping loyalty would be rewarded. It wasn't. It was pocketed, spent, forgotten. The dry bread at her wedding wasn't random. It was symbolic. My family had been feeding me scraps for years, attention, love, acknowledgement, while giving Paige the full feast. And they thought I'd keep swallowing it forever. But somewhere in the shadows, I learned something they never expected. I learned patience. I learned how to observe. I learned that while they were busy performing perfection, they were leaving trails of truth behind them. Truth they didn't think anyone cared enough to gather. But I did. I collected memories, screenshots, whispered confessions, timelines that didn't line up. I learned to save everything, because in a world where they called me a liar, evidence was the only language they'd ever understand. My breaking point came 3 years before the wedding. Paige had gotten engaged once before, to a man named Eric. He wasn't perfect, but he was kind, and more importantly, he trusted her. Too much. I caught her one night at a bar, kissing another man while Eric sat at home planning their honeymoon. I told her to stop. I told her to think about what she was doing. She laughed in my face. "What are you going to do, Sasha? Rat me out? No one would believe you. They never do." And she was right. When I told my mother, she accused me of being jealous. "Stop trying to ruin your sister's happiness." Eric eventually found out on his own, of course. The engagement ended quietly. My family blamed me anyway. "Why do you always have to meddle?" my father asked, shaking his head. "Paige would be fine if you just stayed out of her way." If. Always if. That was the night I started planning. Not revenge, not yet. Just insurance. I began keeping files, labeling folders, documenting every secret I stumbled across. Paige's lies. My mother's hypocrisy. My father's selective silence. I didn't know when or how I'd use it, but deep down, I knew the day would come when they'd push me too far, and when it did, I'd be ready. That day came at the wedding. The dry bread was the final straw. Yes, but it was never just about the bread. It was about decades of being starved while they fed Paige with silver spoons. It was about the sneers, the smirks, the way my existence was reduced to a punchline. And they never saw it coming, because they thought I was too small to fight back. They thought I was too quiet to collect their secrets. They thought wrong. As I sat at table 22, chewing that crust of bread and smiling through humiliation, I thought about all the nights I had stayed up editing video, piecing together stories frame by frame. That was my gift. That was my weapon. And soon, everyone in that ballroom would see the story I had built. Not the story they always told about me, the weak one, the pathetic one, the burden, but the truth, the story they could no longer control once I hit play. People assume revenge is impulsive, that it happens in the heat of the moment, a rash decision fueled by anger. Mine wasn't. It was careful, calculated, crafted frame by frame like one of my edits. Because I'd learned long ago, you can't fight people like my family with words. They twist words. They weaponize them, drown them in laughter, or dismiss them with a sneer. No, to fight people like them, you need proof. And I had plenty. It began with a folder on my laptop labeled simply, insurance. At first, it was little things. Screenshots of texts where Paige mocked her own fiancé. Recordings of drunken rants where she bragged about cheating and laughed about how gullible men are. Notes about the times my mother covered for her, pretending Paige was studying late when she was really out at bars with someone else. The folder grew. Every time I caught Paige slipping, every time I overheard my mother spinning another lie, I added to it. Not because I wanted to use it yet, but because I knew eventually I'd need it. The turning point came 6 months before the wedding. I was editing a corporate documentary when I got a call from a friend who worked hotel security. "You'll never guess who's here," he said, half amused, half pitying. "Your sister, and she's not with her fiancé." He sent me the footage, grainy but unmistakable. Paige leaving a hotel room at midnight with another man, one who definitely wasn't her future husband. I stared at the clip for a long time, my stomach a knot. Then I dragged it into my insurance folder. From that moment, everything I did was deliberate. I started cataloging dates, matching receipts to her excuses. I saved social media posts that contradicted her stories. I even pulled voice memos she had sent to friends, bragging about how she could get away with anything. I built a timeline, a story only I could tell, and as her wedding day approached, as the invitations went out and the rehearsals began, I realized something. This wasn't just insurance anymore. This was justice. I spent nights piecing the footage together, editing clips, laying text messages over images, adding timestamps so no one could deny it. I made it clean, professional, indisputable, and at the very end, I added one final clip, a voice recording of Paige herself laughing, saying, "She'll eat whatever I give her. Dry bread, dry bones, whatever." That's Sasha's role. When I heard that, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I simply nodded, because I knew exactly where it belonged. At the end of my film, the ending note to a story they thought would never be told. By the time the wedding rolled around, the video was queued, encrypted on a drive only I could access. Paige walked into that ballroom, thinking she owned the night. My mother believed she controlled the narrative. Neither of them realized the real storyteller had been sitting in the shadows all along. And when the lights dimmed, when the screen flickered to life, 300 guests would finally see the truth I had been building piece by piece for years. They thought I was powerless, but I was holding the remote. Every wedding has a rhythm. Laughter, music, clinking glasses, the swell of voices bouncing against chandeliers. But that night, the rhythm shifted the moment I stood. The DJ froze, hand hovering over his console. Servers paused mid-stride, balancing trays of champagne flutes. Even the violinists lowered their bows, sensing something in the air. I walked up to the sweetheart table, the microphone cool against my palm. Paige's smirk was already tugging at her lips, ready to swallow me whole. The guests expected a shaky toast, a ramble about sisters are forever, a punchline about being the awkward one in the family. What they didn't expect was the steadiness in my voice. "Good evening," I began, my words weaving easily through the sound system. "I'm Sasha Quinn, the bride's sister. I'll keep this short." A polite laugh rippled. Paige shot me a look that said better. "Stay in your lane." I let her believe it, for exactly 3 seconds. "I've always been told that weddings are about honesty," I continued. "About truth, vows, promises, and what it means to build a life together. So, I thought it was only fair that everyone here gets to see the truth for themselves." I raised my hand, subtle but deliberate. The AV tech in the corner, the one I befriended during setup, caught the signal and pressed play. The ballroom lights dimmed, and suddenly, silence had a heartbeat. At first, confusion. Guests leaned forward, frowning at the giant screen as the first frame flickered to life. Paige, in a hotel hallway, 3 months earlier. She looked nervous, almost human, until the man beside her adjusted his tie and she kissed him like a promise. Gasps cracked through the room. "What is this?" Paige hissed, half rising. Her husband's head snapped toward her, eyes already narrowing. "Turn it off," my mother barked, voice sharper than the clink of her pearls. "This is an outrage." But the footage kept rolling. Clip after clip stitched itself into a damning portrait. Texts bragging about affairs, photos of dinners she claimed were business meetings, voice memos of her mocking the man she had just vowed to spend her life with. By the second minute, whispers had turned to open mutters. By the third, the groom had gone pale. By the fourth, Paige was clawing at the AV cables, shrieking, "This is fake! It's all fake!" And then came the line, the one I'd saved for last. Paige's voice, clear as glass, recorded from her own phone. "She'll eat whatever I give her. Dry bread, dry bones, whatever." That's Sasha's role. The room shifted. Guests didn't just see betrayal. They saw cruelty. They saw me, the girl with the dry bread on her plate, sitting quietly while my sister's own words hung in the air like smoke. My mother surged to her feet, pointing at me like a general ordering fire. "You don't do this to family," she screamed. I didn't even flinch. Family doesn't do this to me. The mic carried my voice calm and clean, slicing through the chaos. The groom's father stood, abruptly, face stone. The maid of honor buried her face in her hands. The best man muttered a prayer. Paige screamed until her throat was raw, but it didn't matter. The story wasn't hers anymore. It was mine. When the video ended, I let the silence sit. 300 people stared at me, at her, at the wreckage of a wedding unraveling in real time. Then I spoke. I was told to smile tonight, to sit quietly, to eat what I was given, but I don't live on scraps anymore. I set the microphone gently on the tablecloth, careful as if it might bruise. Congratulations to the happy couple. May your life together be built on truth. And with that, I walked back to table 22. The uneaten bread still waited. I took one deliberate bite, and I chewed like it was the sweetest meal of my life. Chaos doesn't roar at first. It hums. In the seconds after the video ended, the ballroom sounded like a hive. Chairs scraped. Glasses clinked. Guests whispered in sharp, cutting tones. The string quartet sat frozen, bows limp in their hands, as if playing a single note might shatter the room entirely. And at the center of it all was Paige, veil trembling, face blotched, lips trembling but still curling into half-smirks, as though she could charm her way out of evidence. "Fake!" she screamed again, voice cracking. "It's fake. Don't listen." Her husband, Mark, didn't look at the screen. He didn't look at her either. He stared at the floor, fists clenched, jaw tight. Then he stood. "Is it fake, Paige?" His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. "Is it fake when it's your voice? Your face? Your words?" The room went silent. Paige stammered. It's not what it looks like. It's taken out of context." "Out of context." Mark's laugh was hollow. "You bragged about cheating on me. You mocked me. And you humiliated your own sister on our wedding day." Gasps rippled through the guests. My mother lunged forward, clutching Mark's arm. "She didn't mean it, darling. Every couple has rough patches." "Don't." He yanked his arm away. "Don't call me darling. Don't protect her lies." And just like that, 300 people saw the cracks, not just in a marriage, but in a family's entire facade. The whispers grew. I knew she was trouble. Poor Mark. "Did you hear what she said about Sasha? Dry bread? At her sister's wedding." The flower wall, once the perfect Instagram backdrop, now stood like a monument to hypocrisy. Guests who had been lining up for photos now gave it a wide berth. My mother tried to regain control. She always did. Her pearls rattled as she clutched them, her voice strained but commanding. "Everyone calm down. This is a misunderstanding. Sasha is just jealous." All eyes turned to me. I didn't rise. I didn't argue. I simply met their gazes, steady and unflinching. And for the first time, people believed me. The groom's family moved first. His father, gray-haired and dignified, stood and motioned to the guests. "This event is over. My son will not be made a fool." The band stopped playing altogether. Servers shuffled uncertainly, hovering with trays they no longer dared to serve. The planner, clipboard shaking in her hands, whispered into her headset, "Shut it down." And Paige, she collapsed into her chair, sobbing. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks in black rivers. She clutched at her gown like it could shield her from the stares, the judgment, the truth. But no gown is thick enough to hide what everyone has seen. Mark removed his wedding ring right there in front of everyone, slid it off, set it gently on the table, and pushed his chair back. "I won't spend another day with someone who treats loyalty like a joke," he said. His voice didn't shake. "This marriage is over." And just like that, Paige's perfect wedding shattered. The guests, 300 people dressed in silk and satin, rose not in applause, not in anger, but in stunned silence, their whispers swelling like a tide. Phones buzzed. Videos had already been taken. The story was already leaving the ballroom, spilling onto timelines and group chats. Paige's reputation wasn't just ruined. It was immortalized. My mother turned on me then. Her face was red, her teeth clenched, her hand pointing like a dagger. "You've destroyed us," she spat. "You jealous, bitter child. Do you know what you've done to this family?" I stood slowly. My chair didn't scrape. I moved, carefully, deliberately, every eye on me. "No, Mother," I said softly, but the mic carried it anyway. "I didn't destroy this family. You did. Years ago, when you decided Paige's lies were worth more than my truth. Tonight, I just made sure the rest of the world saw it too." The room exhaled as one, because they knew it was true. As I walked toward the exit, people parted like a tide. No jeers, no mockery, just silence, heavy and electrified. Behind me, Paige wailed. My mother sputtered. Mark walked out another door, his parents close behind. The wedding was over. Not because of me, because of them. Outside, the night air felt like victory. Crisp, clean, honest. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying the weight of their secrets. I didn't look back. I didn't need to, because the chaos behind me wasn't mine anymore. It was theirs. And the best revenge wasn't just that everyone saw Paige's betrayal. It was that they finally saw me. Weddings are supposed to be remembered for joy, for music, laughter, promises whispered beneath chandeliers. My sister's wedding was remembered for silence, the kind of silence that swallows gasps, erases music, and lingers in the bones of everyone who witnessed it. For days after, my phone buzzed with messages. Not from my mother or Paige, they didn't dare, but from cousins, distant relatives, even guests I barely knew. "You were brave." Finally, someone told the truth. "I never liked the way they treated you. It was strange, the way loyalty shifted once the curtain was pulled back." People who had stayed quiet for years suddenly found their voices. They admitted what they'd seen, what they'd suspected, what they had whispered in kitchens but never dared to say aloud. And for once, I wasn't invisible. I was undeniable. The fallout was immediate. Mark filed for annulment within a week. The marriage dissolved faster than the champagne bubbles had on their wedding night. His family cut ties entirely. Their anger focused not on me, but on the lies they'd been fed. My mother tried damage control. She called the video a fabrication, blamed me for sabotaging Paige out of jealousy. But her protests sounded hollow now. People had heard Paige's voice with their own ears. They had seen her face. They had watched a bride crumble under the weight of her own secrets. And my mother? She had been exposed as her accomplice. Her carefully polished image, the society luncheons, the charity galas, the picture-perfect matriarch routine, was tarnished beyond repair. Because when you sneer in public and tell your daughter, "That's all you deserve," people remember, especially when they've seen the proof. Paige vanished for a while, deleted her social media, hid behind curtains. I heard whispers that she tried to reconcile with Mark, but he refused to take her calls. Friends stopped inviting her out. The same people who once orbited her glitter now drifted away, unwilling to risk the burn of her ruined name. The girl who always had a feast at her fingertips was left with crumbs. Exactly what she had thought I deserved. As for me, for the first time in my life, I wasn't defined by their cruelty. I wasn't the girl in the corner, the sister with the chipped spoon, the daughter told to eat whatever she was given. I was the woman who had taken back her story, and I was free. I didn't celebrate loudly. That's not who I am. My victory wasn't champagne and glitter. It was quiet mornings editing videos for clients who respected me. It was friends who invited me to dinner because they wanted my company, not because they pitied me. It was eating what I chose, where I chose, without waiting for someone else's permission. It was peace. Sometimes people ask if I regret it. If I regret airing my family's secrets in front of 300 witnesses. If I regret ruining Paige's big day. If I regret exposing the cracks in the foundation of our family for everyone to see. My answer is always the same. How can you regret the truth? I didn't ruin their reputations. They did. All I did was press play. In the weeks that followed, I replayed that night in my mind, not the chaos, not the screaming, not even Paige's collapse, but the moment after. The moment I sat at table 22, lifted my fork, and tasted my own plate of food while the entire ballroom watched my sister's empire crumble. That was the real revenge. Not the video, not the gasps, but the bite I chewed slowly, savoring it, knowing for the first time in my life that I wasn't starving anymore. Revenge, I've learned, isn't about destruction. It's about reclamation. Taking back what was stolen from you. Your dignity, your voice, your right to sit at the table. And sometimes it's about reminding the people who treated you like nothing that you were always something. More than something. Everything they feared you might become if you ever stopped swallowing their scraps. So no, I don't regret it. Because the night my sister handed me dry bread, she thought she was giving me my role for life. But when I walked out of that ballroom, head high, silence roaring behind me, I knew the truth. She hadn't fed me at all. She'd given me the perfect stage. And I served my revenge cold.